There is no pain in divorce quite like the slow, deliberate erasure of a parent from a child's life. It has the name parental alienation, and it's not just bad co-parenting. It's a strategy designed to destroy your bond. But you don't have to just sit there and take it. Today, we're going to be fighting back and learning what your rights are when it comes to saving your kids. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back to another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. And of course, I am your host, Becky Sampson, as always. So, we're obviously here to provide information to help you navigate through the legal process. And today is a heavy one, but it might be one of the most important conversations that you've ever had this year. We are tackling the beast of high conflict custody and that terrible term, parental alienation. They say that nice guys finish last in divorce, but usually I'm the one telling you that choosing peace is the ultimate power move to protect your money. However, there is one terrifying exception, one specific nightmare scenario where turning the other cheek or waiting for the storm to pass doesn't just cost you money. It costs you your children forever. We are talking about a legal system designed to let people fight, but it often fails to recognize that when one parent is systematically erasing the other, if you're dealing with a high conflict ex who is weaponizing the kids, patience is not a virtue, it's a liability. So today we're going to be pulling no punches. We are diving deep into the strategy of parental alienation with an attorney who has years of fighting for the erased parent. If you want to survive this, you need to stop being nice and start being strategic. Because this is such a complex subject, I couldn't just bring any general attorney. I brought in Kevin Hickey, a Fort Smith, Arkansas divorce and child custody attorney with 26 years in the trenches. Over the past 15 years, he's become especially known for handling high conflict custody cases involving parental alienation. And he's taken that work nationwide, handling cases in 13 different states. What sets Kevin apart is that he's not just reaching once things are on fire. He emphasizes early intervention, helping parents recognize the patterns early on that in response in a way that protects the child and strengthens the case. So welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hi, Becky. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This is kind of an unusual way of me reaching out, but I reached out because I saw you live on TikTok. And I really, really respect and honor the work that you're doing. And to be totally transparent, I was at the gym and you popped up and I was like, what? Who is this guy?
We're everywhere.
I know. And it's funny because I said this before we started the show, but I'm like, it's funny because I don't have my real name on my TikTok account. It's Divorcing Strong. And you're like, who's this person? So yeah. I appreciate you taking the time out to be here today, because this is such a really tough subject. But before we kind of get started, tell us kind of the backstory of what got you into being a divorce attorney and then specializing in this child alienation.
Well, I was told by a mentor attorney when I first started 26 years ago, an area of law will kind of choose you a lot of times. You come out of law school and you think you want to go one direction and then something happens. And that's what kind of happened with me. I took a couple of high profile divorces very, very early in my career. And all of a sudden I was a divorce attorney. So I didn't choose that, but now it's kind of in my blood now. And that's kind of what I do now. And then about 15, 16 years ago, I started getting these cases where one parent was really trying to drive a wedge between the other parent and the children. And I was kind of lost as to how to do that, especially when you're dealing with someone that has a lot of narcissistic tendencies. They're
Yes.
master manipulators, they're very evasive in questioning, and these people were getting away with it. And I'm like, this cannot happen. There has to be a way to fight these cases and stop this from happening. And that's when I started to learn about parental alienation and what it was. And so for the past 15, 16 years, that's those cases, they're very hard. They're very emotionally taxing on me, not just the client, but also on me. And but they're near and dear to my heart, and so that's kind of how I got into it.
Well, so let's start off with actually just explaining what is parental alienation for someone that may be going through some stuff and they're like, "Oh, I'm experiencing this difficult relationship," but what would be the definition of it?
Well, it's primarily anything that's like I said a minute ago, driving a wedge between the other parent and the children. And it
Mm.
takes many, many forms. And there are many, many different tactics that the alienating parent, which is the one engaging in these behaviors, is doing to what we call the target parent, which is the parent that's having this done to them. There's all kinds of like what we call gatekeeping. They will keep you off of school forms. They'll keep you off of medical forms. They won't tell you when they're doing doctor's appointments or who the doctor is. They make negative comments about you to the children. They won't tell you about extracurricular activities. They'll tell you it's at 3 o'clock when really it's at 1 o'clock. And by the time you show up at three, it's already I
Mm.
mean, there's a litany of things and tactics that an alienating parent will do. But parental alienation is pretty much anything that a parent's doing on a consistent pattern basis to try to drive that wedge between the other parent and their children.
And are you usually representing the one that is being alienated?
Yes.
Okay.
And you have to beware a little bit because sometimes you get into the case and you think you're on that side and then you realize you're not. So you have to be, we've through the years trying to get better and better at vetting that up front because a lot of times I'm getting in the case and taking over for another attorney. It's right in the middle of the case, so you're trying to get caught up and see what's going on. But yes, I almost always try to make sure I'm with the parent that's being alienated.
Yeah, because I was just having a conversation this morning that I used to be a property manager, and people would come to me with their issues with roommates and stuff, and I would be like, I can't believe that happened, and then I hear the other side, and I'm like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you just, and
yeah.
I'm dealing with that too as a divorce coach. You never know. You're like, okay, am I on what side am I on this? And having to have that discernment is really important. I can see. I know in the intro I talked a little bit about how you prefer to help at the beginning, which is very difficult to be in the middle or the end of something when there's so much damage that's done. Talk a little bit about getting you involved in the beginning of it to help alleviate some of the problems that could come.
A lot of people come in and they don't, it's already started and
Mm.
the alienation's already started and they don't understand it. They don't know because they don't know what to recognize. They don't know what
Right.
is normal and what's not normal. So a lot of times at the beginning, we're just identifying what's going on and I will have to tell them, look, you're in the beginning stages of being alienated from your children. They'll start to notice behavioral differences in their children. They're not as open with them, or they'll start to say things that their ex or soon to be ex says and use that kind of wording. And so, what we do early on is you've got to try to get on top of that immediately. Make sure
Mm.
that your client is getting plenty of time with the children, 50-50 if at all possible, if not more. And making sure the other attorney knows that what their client is doing. You may need to get a temporary hearing or an emergency hearing very early on so the judge gets up to speed immediately on what's going on. And the number one thing I can tell clients, if I could tell them anything, is document. And I know you told me a little bit about your case that you handled a
Yep.
lot of what your own situation, and you know how important it is to you forget things. So document everything. I don't care if it's a screenshot of a text or from the parenting app, taking a note. I tell clients, get a calendar and call it your Kevin calendar or your case calendar. And so when something happens, you can write it down on that date. But that's the biggest things you can do is start documenting and making sure. And people don't want to have to do that. They
No, and
think, I
they
don't want to
and
have to do that, but they have to.
yeah, it's a job. I 100% agree that documenting wins cases, because if you can show that the proof of it, then it starts showing a pattern. And you mentioned something, that getting those motions in there early in the case to alert the judge, rather than waiting years or months, and then the judge is like, "Why didn't you bring this up?" You
Hmm.
know, I think is really an important strategy as well. What kind of, I know people probably come to
And
you.
I want to
Yeah.
I know I'm interrupting. Can I mention something? You mentioned the judge there, and I want to make it very clear too, because a lot of people, the general public, they're not in court all the time like we are. I mean, this is my job. This is what I do every day, but they don't understand the process. And one big misperception is people will think that the judge knows everything about their
I
case.
know.
And they don't know any, and not only that, they don't know anything about your case. So a lot of times clients assume that the judge has already seen every text, every email, every interrogatory, read the depositions. The judge hasn't seen any of that. So that's why it's so important that when you go in, you've got to be able to tell your story as to what's happened with you and back it up with your evidence, because the judge does not know anything about your case other than what's been filed. And they will read pleadings, but then they know they've got to have evidence that they're going to hear at the hearing. So they don't know all that stuff.
Yeah, and they have to be reminded, because even if you've
100%.
been, a lot of times people think, I mean, I went through 21 hearings, and I mean, I had to learn for myself that it wasn't, remember on the last hearing, this is what happened. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because they don't remember. They hear how many cases a day. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I think that is a
Hmm.
really good point. Is it is really storytelling. Whether you're representing yourself or having an attorney, they've got to be able to quickly and concisely, not without all that emotional stuff, because that's dealing with something that you're dealing with. High conflict can be very emotional, but that usually hurts you in court. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, try to be as objective as possible. And I tell clients this too when they're going to go talk with the ad litem, the attorney for the children,
Yeah.
or a custody evaluator. If you go in there and you're calling your ex every name in the book, and he's a jerk or she did this, that's going to get you nowhere. And in fact, it's going to get you negative points. But if you go in there objectively, and an example of something that would be objective is, she rarely ever tells me about appointments. And let me give you
Mm.
an example. And you pull out your calendar we were talking about, or your notes, and you say, 5 times in the last 4 months, she set up an appointment without talking to me first. 4 times in the last 4 months, she was supposed to tell me about the baseball practice and never did. Those are objective things. Those are objective parenting things. That's not name calling. That's not anything. That's giving either the judge or an ad litem something to hang their hat on and to back up and support what you're saying, and what your position is. And that's the number one thing. Secondly, it really gives you credibility when you go in there reasonably and in a rational way, explain why you're having issues.
Yeah, no, it is the way that you present it. And a lot of people, that especially when you've never been in a courtroom, they don't understand the process and and just the logistics of how they function. So that's another reason why I've started this podcast. Is it's like, look, can we at least teach you
Mhm.
about judges, about attorneys, how to work with attorneys? And that kind of comes to a question that we talked a little bit about before the show, is how do you recommend somebody that's dealing with such a panic of like, I'm losing my children, and getting them back on track to work and giving you the correct information that you need? Like, how do they work best with you?
One of the things I tell clients a lot is, I can't help you with it or minimize it or push it to the front so we can really fight for that unless you tell me. If I don't know about
Mm.
it, I can't do anything with it. So The reason that we have confidentiality rules and that everything you tell your attorney is confidential is for that reason. So you are encouraged to be open and honest with your lawyer. And in these kinds of cases, you've got to do that. And I will have clients all the time. I'll say, put a timeline together for me. That will uh, save me a lot of legwork. It'll save you attorney's fees because I don't have to dig up all these
Yep.
facts myself. Send that to me, and that'll really help me a lot. And one of the things they'll say is, well, I know I'm going to put too much information in there and stuff you don't need, so I'll sift that out. And I say, no, I don't care if you just do a running narrative or whatever. I'll pick what I need and I can sift out the other stuff because I don't want them to forget to put something in there that they think may not be very important, but it really strikes me as important and something we can use. So just be open and honest and put all the facts in there you can. Your attorney will sift through what's needed and what's not.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with an attorney the other day, and it's some people like all that information and sift through it themselves, which that's how I am too.
Hmm.
I mean, let me get all the information and then I'll go, okay, we need this, this, this. But some attorneys don't. So I guess it's important to be able to know what your attorney wants, but especially in this kind of a case where you're dealing with a lot of things where they may not understand fully what what they're dealing with. And you need to build your own case. And if you're going to build the case, then you need the information, right?
Well, yes, my biggest thing is, and I can see why some attorneys say that because some clients want to send you an email every
Every day.
day. Some clients want to send you an email every 3 hours. And so with those people, I tell them, look, you start a Kevin list of questions or topics or whatever. And if it's not urgent, which 99% of the time it's not, just put that on that list and then send me an email with all those questions someday or bring it up when you come in to meet with me. Because that'll save on attorney's fees too. Because every time I have to open that email, I'm having to stop and look at that. Uh, but yeah, I just don't want a client to forget something that could be really, really important. Is why I say put it all in there, and then because I have clients help with deposition questions too. I'll say, okay, I'm going to take Dad's deposition. So, Mom, who's my client, I need you to give me some questions, some things you want me to ask and put them all in there. There's a lot that I probably won't ask, but there's a lot of stuff that you're wanting to know. I've got my own questions, but I want to know what you want to know too. And if it's relevant and part of the case, I'll ask them.
It's like with any other relationship. I imagine, Kevin, that it's the relationship with your attorney. You need to understand how to communicate and asking those questions and saying, look, do you want all this information? Do you not want the information? How can we communicate the best so that it's the best financially,
Hmm.
and also how can move freely and comfortably with that attorney. Because I mean, some people, I had talked to a gal yesterday she's like, I'm afraid to even send anything to my attorney because I'm getting billed every 5 seconds, and I'm like, well, you need the information, but from the very get-go, asking your attorney, how can this be the most efficient relationship? Because everybody works differently. So I think that's an important.
The,
um,
the more you can organize your information, the better you're going to help your attorney, and it's going to lower your attorney's fees because I, I, I don't want to say never, but I don't know that I ever get happier than when a client comes in with a binder organized. Here's the stuff that happened in January, February, whatever, and it's all ready for me to just go through because it helps me understand everything too. So the
mhm.
more you can organize things and the more legwork you can do, that helps your attorney and that'll help with your attorney fees too, or it
Yeah.
should.
I remember we were on a hearing, and I was in two different states from my attorney when he was representing me. And he's like, Becky, where's this piece of paper? And I was like, that orange binder behind the second tab. And he's like, oh my gosh. Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, learning how to be organized and reviewing that so that you can support your attorney. I really want to get into the meat of this issue with the parental alienation. What's probably some of the most common questions that people ask you on your live or even when they come into your office about parental alienation?
Just how to stop it. That's everyone's number one question is how do I make this stop? Because they feel like, and a lot of times they've gotten a fair amount down the road in their case, and they feel like the other parent's just getting away with it. And a lot of times when I get into the case, the other parent has been getting away with it. So that's the biggest thing, is how to stop it and how to get it reversed. And so you have to do discovery, you have to document, and it's hard to do, but I have to preach patience and say there will be a time and a place for us to present all this. I can't
Mm.
send it all to the judge today. We've got a hearing coming up in 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever, and I know it's hard, but let's keep getting our ducks in a row for that. And but that's the biggest question, is how do I stop it? I mean,
Right.
he or she continues to get away with this, and until you bring it to the judge's attention and really show what's going on, it's sometimes you just have to kind of be patient for a little bit.
And so and you may not know this, but I do own a company called Only Subpoenas, where I do subpoenas for attorneys. How
Okay.
often do you use subpoenas in what you're having to do? Because if you're dealing with difficult people and they don't give you the discovery, what's been your experience?
That's the next step. We have to subpoena the information. So, generally in discovery, a lot of times in interrogatories and requests for production, we can get a lot of the documents we need. But I always, when we get responses from the other side, we send them to our client and say, print these out, do it electronically, however you want, but I want you to go through all this and
Yes.
mark on there what you think is incorrect. I don't. You as the client know this is incorrect. That is not what happened on that date. He's got more money than that in that account. Those kinds of things are things
Yeah.
I need to know. And I tell the clients, I don't care if you just make a copy of their discovery responses and write right on there and send it to me, because then I can follow up and say, are you going to give me this, or I need to subpoena it? But yeah, we have to use subpoenas all the time. We use Freedom of Information Act requests or subpoenas for body cam footage from the police. Yeah, you sometimes have to go that route.
Well, and people don't realize the power of subpoenas, because I've talked a little bit about this on here, but sometimes people think, especially when I take calls, I took one yesterday and she's like, well, how do I find this? I'm like, well, a subpoena is the way that if they're not giving you the information, just go get it from the actual organization.
Go to the
And
source. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I always say, stop asking for permission and just go get what you need so that you can move your case. The other thing I really appreciated that you said was that you want them to go through that. I thought that was very empowering to me when I got subpoenas. For it would take me a day or two to go through everything. I did. I got the highlighter out and
Hmm.
highlighted, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. What is that? What is this? I put it in my spreadsheet. But you're empowering your client with the information, because they truly are the only ones that know their case better than anybody else. And
That's exactly right. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you send that back to me, it's even better if you say, see where he said this? Here's the text message that shows he's lying.
exactly.
I keep that, and when I have that other person, the other party, the opposing party on the stand at trial, I have their deposition transcript there. I've got their interrogatories, which were given under oath, their responses there, and I will use those to impeach them in front of the judge to show they're lying. And so the more you can help, you lived it, not me. So the more you can help me with that, you're giving me ammunition that we can use at the hearing.
Yeah, but Kevin, I have to say, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that are like, well, I just turned everything over to my attorney and I don't, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I'm like, okay, you know this case, you know
Hmm.
what needs to be done. So it's a partnering with your attorney in this is like so vitally important, not only for your case, but also, my goodness, I'm getting all these calls and I've never had a, anyway,
You're
I try to turn it off.
popular.
Well, I don't know. Today's kind of a crazy day, but anyway, yeah, I think that is really, really important for people to know, is they truly do have the power and the knowledge. They just, especially if they're in an abusive, maybe we should talk a little bit about this, is that being in an abusive or toxic relationship, they've been made to believe, especially if have narcissistic tendencies, made to believe that they're powerless, and they're literally grasping at anything that they can without feeling like they're going to get drowned. And so it
Mhm.
sounds to me that when you work with them, you're like, look, let's work together. You do have the information. Let me help you get out of that.
Well, well, just to give you an example, let's just say you're using a parenting app or text messages, and you've sent me 300 pages of those screenshots, whatever it is. And there's an important sequence in there where something happened at a certain time, and it's very important that 7 minutes after that, something else happened, and you know that. You know
Mhm.
that. Well, some clients are like, well, I gave you all that information. You'll figure out that important part. Where it's so much easier for me if you say, now pay attention on page 178 and you'll see that event that happened that day and why it was important that 7 minutes later that next event happened. If you tell me that, that just, I will figure it out, but it might take me 2 hours of reading through everything. But if you tell me that, it only takes me a couple of minutes. So,
Well, and it's empowering. I know it was for me. It was empowering for me to do that investigation work because it helped me connect dots and
mhm.
made me feel like, okay, I'm getting a full picture rather than just handing it all over and not having and expecting you to do the work. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a researcher. I learned through my process of divorce that I'm a researcher and I want all the information so that I can know all of my rights.
Well,
Um,
and you got to go back to what we talked about at the very beginning. By the time I get to the final hearing, well, you as the client have been living it for years or however long. I've been living it for months or however long, getting ready for the
exactly.
hearing. You've got to remember the most important person on that day is the judge, and the judge hasn't lived any of it. So we've got to be concise and very clear as to why things are important when we present that evidence. So the more you can help your attorney with why these things matter, the better, because we've got to explain it to that most important person that day, which is the judge. You've got to get that story across.
Well, and you mentioned before we started the show that you've had some pretty high profile cases. Can you kind of discuss a little bit? I mean, you don't have to talk details, but just some of the things that you learned and how that knowledge has helped in your future cases. Or what did you learn, or what would be valuable for the listeners to hear?
Well, you just need to get an attorney as early as you can to start helping you, and an attorney that understands these kinds of cases because they can get off the rails in a hurry. And if you're
Mhm.
dealing with the other parent is very either narcissistic or whatever, borderline personality disorder, whatever, that they are very my way or the highway, and I'm always right, and they think they're above the law, they will take all kinds of uh, avenues to try to cut you out of the children's lives, move to another state. That's the John Mast case that I had, where it started in North Dakota, and that's where the divorce and custody was. But mom took off with the kids to where her family lived in Idaho.
Mm,
And so for the next 3 years, John was trying to fight to get his kids back. And and ultimately he was killed at a visitation exchange. And uh, that you were dealing with a personality there that was my way or the highway, and I'm above the law and I can do whatever. And when he finally got a joint custody ruling, she still didn't accept that. And when he went to the visitation exchange to pick up the kids at that grocery store parking lot, he was murdered. And so not all cases end that way, but the point being, these cases can get off the rails real fast if you don't
yes.
try to do something from the beginning.
Yeah, and you mentioned before the show that is also something that people don't really consider sometimes is those exchanges can be very dangerous. So what can they do to help prevent or to protect themselves from that?
There are visitation exchange centers that will
Mm,
supervise an exchange where one parent will come at say 5 o'clock and the other parent is not to get there until 5:15 and the other parent's already gone. So that helps. You can
yeah.
use police departments if they will supervise for you. John had a public place that day, and there's a lot behind that story, but he had a couple of siblings with him too, and I think he felt like he was taking appropriate steps to make sure something didn't happen, but it still did. But nothing's going to be 100%. But those are some of the things you can do is either at a visitation exchange center or a police department is one of the best options.
So do you represent mostly men or women or both?
I get asked that a lot. It comes down to about 50-50.
Really?
It's just kind of 50-50. Some people will come in and say, well, I know you're a father's rights attorney and that's why I'm here. And I kind of say, well, yeah, I'm for mother's rights too. I mean, but fathers have really,
Taking a beating.
for you, what's that?
They've taken a beating.
Well, they have. And so, it almost is like they need to be kind of supported a little more because for decades, we're in a different society now. For decades, the man was the breadwinner most of the time, and the mom was the homemaker, and we're just
Mhm.
in a totally different world now. And so where the law is trying to catch up with that. Whereas before, decades ago, mom automatically got custody in a divorce because dad was working and whatever else. Now, dads are just as involved. Moms are out in the workforce just as much as men. And it's just a different world. And so the men's rights, legal rights, as far as custody and time with their kids, has had to kind of catch up.
Well, I know that, it reminds me of, I didn't mention this to you before, but I had a friend, actually, I met him. My grandmother had passed away, and we were giving all my grandfather's tools away. And this guy reached out to me on Facebook and was like, hey, I build homes. I'd love to take it and use it to build my homes. And I said, so we kind of stayed in touch, and he was in the middle of a divorce. I had already gone through one of my divorces at that time. And so we kind of stayed in touch, and he was drugged through the court couple $100,000, and 4 out of his 5 kids were turned against him. And he called me one day and he says, Becky, I can't do this anymore. And, I hadn't had kids, so I didn't know the stress and all of that, and I turned him over I called a friend of mine that had been a guy friend of mine. The same thing happened to him. And he spoke with him. And then just 2 weeks later, he had taken his life. And he's not the only one that I know of but the statistic is 10 times, men are 10 times more at risk of suicide during divorce. Have you seen that happen, especially when kids are turned against? I'm not saying it only happens to men, but yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. And less than 12 months ago, I had a client that committed suicide in the middle of one of those situations where he was being severely alienated. And, even with John, and I won't go into, there was a lot of history with his case, but when we were waiting on the ruling, and it took months for this judge to get a ruling out, which did not help things, but
Mm-mm.
he was totally hopeless. And
Mm.
I have seen that from parents. And that's with this man that committed suicide last year. I mean, he's just like, the entire world is against me. I can't get the judge to
Yep.
listen. Nothing's happening. My attorney is filing these things, and I'm glad of that, but nothing's happening and so they get hopeless. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, it reminds me of somebody I also talked to just recently, and he obviously was mentally, or not, I shouldn't say mentally, but emotionally really struggling, and his ex-wife was going to use that against him in court. And I said to him, I said, look, my suggestion to you is that you get your mental and emotional state in check. Go and that is something that can also be weaponized through the system. But make sure that you're coming at it. And I just talked to his mom the other day and said, oh, he's doing so much better. But it's that mental and emotional, spiritual, physical, all of it is so important when you're going through, especially when you're dealing with these difficult personalities. They want to
Yeah.
they want to beat you down and make you surrender, right? That's the game.
Mhm. Well, and
Um,
that's one thing I tell clients, especially if I see, every person's different that comes into my office, and some I can tell are really struggling more than
yeah,
others. And I ask them who their support network is. I said, do you have tight
perfect.
friends? Do you have a spiritual network, a church or a pastor or whoever? Or family, your close family, your parents or siblings or whatever. And if they do, I tell them you've got to keep those people close. Don't get isolated. Talk to them. When you're struggling, reach out to them because I'm going to be helping your legal side. but you've got to have your tight support network too, and keep those people around because you need help. Try not to do this alone.
Yep. Self-care is the number one thing. You're not going to help you, your kids, or anybody if you're not, and I get it. I 100% get the emotional craziness that
Hmm.
you feel. But it's getting yourself stable, which is really, really important, for going forward.
Well, I mean, you see the statistics all the time. I mean, we have one life, and you see those lists of what are the most stressful things people go through in their lives. Divorce is always way up there, and you've got to recognize that. You
Yeah.
are going to be on this planet for however many years, a long, long time, but one of the most stressful things in your life that's going to happen is going on right now. You need help with that.
Divorce and then
It's not a
contested.
normal day, and it's not going to go by fast. So
Contested divorce is like 10 times worse.
it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I like to validate people that, look, if you feel like you're going crazy, it's normal to feel the way that you feel, and especially if you're dealing with a high conflict, contested issue. So
Yeah,
they're not alone, and there is life after divorce. It's just getting you through this part that feels like, it's just muck, the mucky muck of
that's
it.
right.
Um,
Mhm.
well, thank you so much for coming on. I know that the work that you do, and I like to always acknowledge the work that my guests do, because I know it's hard. And you mentioned early on in the podcast that it is a stress on you as well. And it's a love, it's a service of love, really, to be doing this and being able to advocate for people, because it does matter. I mean, their families matter, their livelihood matters, and those relationships need to be intact as much as you can possibly have, and really advocate. I don't like the fighting, but it feels like a fight sometimes. It really
Yeah,
does.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So what? This is always the question I'd love to end my shows with: is what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Divorcing strong. When I hear those words, and I kind of saw the title of that you've got, divorcing strong. To me, it's you've got to take care of yourself and just be strong throughout the process because it can weigh you down. I went to a Parental Alienation International Conference recently, and some parents that had been through it spoke, and I heard the word pulverized. And this guy was talking about how the legal wheels of justice, the money involved, the stress, it pulverizes you. And I had not heard that before, but that really made an impression on me. So you got to stay strong throughout that process because it's going to be hard, and you've got to know it's a marathon, not a sprint. And just mentally get that in your mind at the beginning, and maybe that'll help.
One day at a time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
One step at a time, one motion at a time, one discovery quest, and eventually they will get there. So, and I hope that people understand that, if you can be strong and just one more ounce of hope and encouragement during this time, you're going to get on the other side and not have to look back and go, I wish I would have done this.
Right.
Um, and that's one of my, I'm just so sad when someone calls me and says, Becky, I should have known all that. I'm like, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. It is what it is. Let's get you through it so that you can get on with your life. And so I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Well, thank you so much for what you do, and hang on just one sec. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. So thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. I've been your host, Becky Sampson. I've been here with Kevin Hickey, and please reach out to him. I was going to ask him one more question, which I may bring him back on. I'm going to bring you right back on to ask you this question. You're in
Ah,
13 states, right? You can work with people across the states.
well, here's how that works. I'm licensed in Arkansas in the District of Columbia, and my office is in Arkansas. But what I have done is people will hire a local custody or divorce attorney in their state, and they don't feel like they're quite grasping the parental alienation issues. And so they start to Google and look for attorneys that do that. And that's usually when I'm brought in the case. So I get admitted to practice in your state through the Pro Hoc Vice process and for your case. And so that's how I can do it. And then I work alongside your local attorney.
Perfect. And make
Yeah.
sure you've got his website and you've got all of his contact information in the show notes. Please reach out to Kevin and also follow you. You're all over the place. You're on every social media because when
I'm
I was
on
doing your
TikTok. Yes, that's true. And also for
yeah.
people that, if you call up for a consult, we usually have a consultation fee. But if you mention Divorcing Strong, we will waive that so you can have a free consultation. So,
oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that because it
very welcome.
is tough, and I appreciate you being willing to do that. And make sure you follow your lives on TikTok too.
Yeah, please do. And then come in there with your questions.
Sweet. I love it. I'll definitely be joining when I'm at the gym still. So if you see Divorcing Strong, I'll, so, all right, hold on one more second. Thank you guys again for joining us on a Divorcing Strong podcast. And we're here live on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, most Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays of each week. And please also, if you would like to, download the free download, which is 100 divorce terms, will help you navigate through working with this space of divorce, whether you're working with an attorney or not. Please empower yourself with knowledge. And we'll talk to you on the next one. See you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.